Day 7, the ninth story of the Decameron. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Eugene Smith. The Decameron by Giovanni Boccaccio. Translated by J.M. Rigg. Day 7, the ninth story. Lydia, wife of Nicostratus, loves Pyrrhus, who, to assure himself thereof, asks 3 things of her, all of which she does, and therewithal enjoys him in the presence of Nicostratus, and makes Nicostratus believe that what he saw was not real.
So diverting did the ladies find Neiphile's story, that it kept them still laughing and talking, though the king, having bidden Pamphilo tell his story, had several times enjoined silence upon them. However, as soon as they had done, Pamphilo thus began.
Methinks, worshipful ladies, there is no venture, though fraught with gravest peril, that whoso loves ardently will not make. Of which truth, exemplified though it has been in stories not a few, I purpose to afford you yet more signal proof in one which I shall tell you, wherein you will hear of a lady who, in her enterprises, owed far more to the favour of fortune than to the guidance of reason. Wherefore, I should not advise any of you rashly to follow in her footsteps, seeing that fortune is not always in a kindly mood, nor are the eyes of all men equally holden. In Argos, the most ancient city of Achaia, the fame of whose kings of old time is out of all proportion to its size, there dwelt of yore Nicostratus, a nobleman, to whom, when he was already verging on old age, fortune gave to wife a great lady, Lydia by name, whose courage matched her charms. Nicostratus, as suited with his rank and wealth, kept not a few retainers and hounds and hawks, and was mightily addicted to the chase. Among his dependents was a young man named Pyrrhus, a gallant of no mean accomplishment, and goodly of person and beloved and trusted by Nicostratus above all other, of whom Lydia grew mightily enamoured, insomuch that neither by day nor by night might her thoughts stray from him. But whether it was that Pyrrhus wist not her love, or would have none of it, he gave no sign of recognition. Whereby the lady's suffering waxing more than she could bear, she made up her mind to declare her love to him, and having a chambermaid, Lusca by name, in whom she placed great trust, she called her, and said, "Lusca, tokens thou hast had from me of my regard that should ensure thy obedience and loyalty, wherefore have a care that what I shall now tell thee reach the ears of none but him to whom I shall bid thee impart it. Thou seest, Lusca, that I am in the prime of my youth and lusty head, and have neither lack nor stint of all such things as folk desire, save only, to be brief, that I have one cause to repine, to wit, that my husband's years so far outnumber my own. Wherefore, with that whereon young ladies take most pleasure, I am but ill provided, and as my desire is no less than theirs, 'tis now some while since I determined that, if fortune has shown herself so little friendly to me by giving me a husband so advanced in years, at least I will not be mine own enemy by sparing to devise the means whereby my happiness and health may be assured, and that herein, as in all other matters, my joy may be complete. I have chosen thereto to minister by his embraces our Pyrrhus, deeming him more worthy than any other man, and have so set my heart upon him that I am ever ill at ease, save when he is present either to my sight or to my mind, insomuch that, unless I foregather with him without delay, I doubt that 'twill be the death of me. And so, if thou wouldst hold my life dear, thou wilt show him my love on such wise as thou mayest deem best, and make my suit to him that he be pleased to come to me, when thou shalt go to fetch him." "That gladly will I," replied the chambermaid, and as soon as she found convenient time and place, she drew Pyrrhus apart, and as best she knew how, conveyed her lady's message to him. Which Pyrrhus found passing strange to hear, for 'twas in truth a complete surprise to him, and he doubted the lady did but mean to try him. Wherefore he presently, and with some asperity, answered thus: "Lusca, believe I cannot this message comes from my lady. Have a care therefore what thou sayest, and if perchance it does come from her, I doubt she does not mean it. And if perchance she does mean it, why then I am bound by my Lord above what I deserve, and I would not for my life do him such a wrong. So have a care never to speak of such matters to me again." Lusca, nowise disconcerted by his uncompliant tone, rejoined: "I shall speak to thee, Pyrrhus, of these and all other matters, wherewith I may be commissioned by my lady, as often as she shall bid me, whether it pleases or irks thee. But thou art a blockhead." So, somewhat chafed, Lusca bore Pyrrhus's answer back to her lady, who would fain have died when she heard it, and some days afterwards resumed the topic, saying: "Thou knowest, Lusca, that 'tis not the first stroke that fells the oak. Wherefore, methinks, thou wert best go back to this strange man, who is minded to evince his loyalty at my expense, and choosing a convenient time, declare to him all my passion, and do thy best endeavour that the affair be carried through, for if it should thus lapse, 'twould be the death of me. Besides which, he would think we had but trifled with him, and whereas 'tis his love we would have, we should earn his hatred." So, after comforting the lady, the maid hied her in quest of Pyrrhus, whom she found in a gladsome and propitious mood, and thus addressed: "'Tis not many days, Pyrrhus, since I declared to thee how ardent is the flame with which thy lady and mine is consumed for love of thee, and now again I do thee wit thereof, and that, if thou shalt not relent of the harshness that thou didst manifest the other day, thou mayest rest assured that her life will be short. Wherefore I pray thee to be pleased to give her solace of her desire, and shouldst thou persist in thy obduracy, I, that give thee credit for not a little sense, shall deem thee a great fool. How flattered thou shouldst be to know thyself beloved above all else by a lady so beauteous and high born, and how indebted shouldst thou feel thyself to fortune, seeing that she has in store for thee a boon so great and so suited to the cravings of thy youth, aye, and so like to be of service to thee upon occasion of need. Bethink thee, if there be any of thine equals whose life is ordered more agreeably than thine will be if thou but be wise. Which of them wilt thou find so well furnished with arms and horses, clothes and money as thou shalt be, if thou but give my lady thy love? Receive then my words with open mind. Be thyself again. Bethink thee that 'tis fortune's way to confront a man but once with smiling mien and open lap, and if he then accept not her bounty, he has but himself to blame if afterward he find himself in want, in beggary. Besides which, no such loyalty is demanded between servants and their masters as between friends and kinsfolk. Rather 'tis for servants, so far as they may, to behave towards their masters as their masters behave towards them. Thinkest thou that, if thou hadst a fair wife, or mother, or daughter, or sister, that found favour in Nicostratus's eyes, he would be so scrupulous on the point of loyalty as thou art disposed to be in regard of his lady? Thou art a fool, if so thou dost believe. Hold it for certain that if blandishments and supplications did not suffice, he would, whatever thou mightest think of it, have recourse to force. Observe we then towards them and theirs the same rule which they observe towards us and ours. Take the boon that fortune offers thee, repulse her not, rather go thou to meet her, and hail her advance. For be sure that if thou dost not do so, to say naught of thy lady's death, which will certainly ensue, Thou thyself wilt repent thee thereof so often that thou wilt be fain of death." Since he had last seen Lusca, Pyrrhus had repeatedly pondered what she had said to him, and had made his mind up that, should she come again, he would answer her in another sort, and comply in all respects with the lady's desires, provided he might be assured that she was not merely putting him to the proof. Wherefore he now made answer: "Lo now, Lusca, I acknowledge the truth of all that thou sayest, but, on the other hand, I know that my lord is not a little wise and wary, and, as he has committed all his affairs to my charge, I sorely misdoubt me that 'tis with his approbation and by his advice, and but to prove me, that Lydia does this. Wherefore let her do 3 things which I shall demand of her for my assurance, and then there is naught that she shall crave of me, but I will certainly render her prompt obedience. Which 3 things are these: First, let her in Nicostratus's presence kill his fine sparrowhawk. Then she must send me a lock of Nicostratus's beard, and lastly, one of his best teeth." Hard seemed these terms to Lusca, and hard beyond measure to the lady, but love, that great fautor of enterprise and master of stratagem, gave her resolution to address herself to their performance. Wherefore, through the chambermaid, she sent him word that what he required of her she would do, and that without either reservation or delay. And therewithal she told him that, as he deemed Nicostratus so wise, she would contrive that they should enjoy one another in Nicostratus's presence, and the Nicostratus should believe that 'twas a mere show. Pyrrhus, therefore, anxiously expected what the lady would do. Some days thus passed, and then Nicostratus gave a great breakfast, as was his frequent wont, to certain gentlemen, and when the tables were removed, the lady, robed in green samite, and richly adorned, came forth of her chamber into the hall wherein they sat, and before the eyes of Pyrrhus and all the rest of the company, hied her to the perch on which stood the sparrowhawk that Nicostratus so much prized, and loosed him, and, as if she were minded to carry him on her hand, took him by the jesses and dashed him against the wall so that he died. Whereupon, "Alas, my lady, what hast thou done?" exclaimed Nicostratus. But she vouchsafed no answer, save that, turning to the gentlemen that had sat at meat with him, she said, "My lords, ill-fitted were I to take vengeance on a king that had done me despite, if I lacked the courage to be avenged on a sparrowhawk. You are to know that by this bird I have long been cheated of all the time that ought to be devoted by gentlemen to pleasuring their ladies, for with the first streaks of dawn Nicostratus has been up and got him to horse, and hawk on hand, hied him to the champaign to see him fly, leaving me, such as you see me, alone and ill content abed. For which cause I have oftentimes been minded to do that which I have now done, and have only refrained therefrom, that, biding my time, I might do it in the presence of men that should judge my case justly, as I trust you will do." Which hearing, the gentlemen, who deemed her affections no less fixed on Nicostratus than her words imported, broke with one accord into a laugh, and turning to Nicostratus, who was sore displeased, fell a saying, "Now well done of the lady to avenge her wrongs by the death of the sparrowhawk." And so, the lady being withdrawn to her chamber, they passed the affair off with divers pleasantries, turning the wrath of Nicostratus to laughter. Pyrrhus, who had witnessed what had passed, said to himself, "Nobly indeed has my lady begun, and on such wise as promises well for the felicity of my love. God grant that she so continue." And even so Lydia did, for not many days after she had killed the sparrowhawk, she, being with Nicostratus in her chamber, from caressing passed to toying and trifling with him, and he, sportively pulling her by the hair, gave her occasion to fulfil the second of Pyrrhus's demands, which she did by nimbly laying hold of one of the lesser tufts of his beard, and, laughing the while, plucking it so hard that she tore it out of his chin. Which Nicostratus, somewhat resenting, "Now what cause hast thou," quoth she, "to make such a wry face? 'Tis but that I have plucked some half-dozen hairs from thy beard. Thou didst not feel it as much as did I, but now thy tugging of my hair." And so they continued jesting and sporting with one another, the lady jealously guarding the tuft that she had torn from the beard, which the very same day she sent to her cherished lover. The third demand caused the lady more thought, but, being amply endowed with wit, and powerfully seconded by love, she failed not to hit upon an apt expedient. Nicostratus had in his service 2 lads, who, being of gentle birth, had been placed with him by their kinsfolk that they might learn manners, one of whom, when Nicostratus sat at meat, carved before him, while the other gave him to drink. Both lads Lydia called to her, and gave them to understand that their breath smelt, and admonished them that, when they waited on Nicostratus, they should hold their heads as far back as possible, saying never a word of the matter to any. The lads, believing her, did as she bade them. Whereupon she took occasion to say to Nicostratus, "Hast thou marked what these lads do when they wait upon thee?" "Troth, that have I," replied Nicostratus. "Indeed, I have often had it in mind to ask them why they do so." "Nay," rejoined the lady, "spare thyself the pains, for I can tell thee the reason, which I have for some time kept close, lest it should vex thee. But as I now see that others begin to beware of it, it need no longer be withheld from thee. 'Tis for that thy breath stinks shrewdly that they thus avert their heads from thee. 'Twas not wont to be so, nor know I why it should be so, and 'tis most offensive when thou art in converse with gentlemen, and therefore 'twould be well to find some way of curing it." "I wonder what it could be," returned Nicostratus. "Is it perchance that I have a decayed tooth in my jaw?" "That may well be," quoth Lydia, and taking him to a window, she caused him open his mouth, and after regarding it on this side and that, "O Nicostratus," quoth she, "how couldst thou have endured it so long? Thou hast a tooth here which, by what I see, is not only decayed, but actually rotten throughout. And beyond all manner of doubt, if thou let it remain long in thy head, 'twill infect its neighbours. So 'tis my advice that thou out with it before the matter grows worse." "My judgment jumps with thine," quoth Nicostratus. "Wherefore send without delay for a chirurgeon to draw it." "God forbid," returned the lady, "that chirurgeon come hither for such a purpose. Methinks the case is such that I can very well dispense with him, and draw the tooth myself. Besides which, these chirurgeons do these things in such a cruel way that I could never endure to see thee or know thee under the hands of any of them. Wherefore my mind is quite made up to do it myself, that, at least if thou shalt suffer too much, I may give it over at once, as a chirurgeon would not do." And so she caused the instruments that are used on such occasions to be brought her, and having dismissed all other attendants, save Lusca, from the chamber, and locked the door, made Nicostratus lie down on a table, set the pincers in his mouth, and clapped them on one of his teeth, which, while Lusca held him, so that, albeit he roared for pain, he might not move, she wrenched by main force from his jaw, and keeping it close, took from Lusca's hand another and horribly decayed tooth, which she showed him, suffering it half dead as he was, saying, "See what thou hadst in thy jaw. Mark how far gone it is." Believing what she said, and deeming that, now the tooth was out, his breath would no more be offensive, and being somewhat eased of the pain, which had been extreme, and still remained, so that he murmured not little, by divers comforting applications, he quitted the chamber. Whereupon the lady forthwith sent the tooth to her lover, who, having now full assurance of her love, placed himself entirely at her service. But the lady being minded to make his assurance yet more sure, and deeming each hour 1,000 till she might be with him, now saw fit, for the more ready performance of the promise she had given him, to feign sickness. And Nicostratus, coming to see her one day after breakfast, attended only by Pyrrhus, she besought him for her better solacement to help her down to the garden. Wherefore Nicostratus on one side and Pyrrhus on the other took her and bore her down to the garden, and set her on a lawn at the foot of a beautiful pear-tree. And after they had sat there a while, the lady, who had already given Pyrrhus to understand what he must do, said to him, "Pyrrhus, I should greatly like to have some of those pears. Get thee up the tree, and shake some of them down." Pyrrhus climbed the tree in a trice, and began to shake down the pears, and while he did so, "Fie, sir," quoth he, "what is this you do? And you, madam, have you no shame, that you suffer him to do so in my presence? Think you that I am blind? 'Twas but now that you were greatly indisposed. Your cure has been speedy indeed to permit of your so behaving. And as for such a purpose, you have so many goodly chambers, why betake you not yourselves to one of them, if you must needs so disport yourselves? 'Twould be much more decent than to do so in my presence." Whereupon the lady, turning to her husband, "Now what can Pyrrhus mean?" said she. "Is he mad?" "Nay, madam," quoth Pyrrhus, "mad am not I. Think you I see you not?" Whereat Nicostratus marvelled not a little, and, "Pyrrhus," quoth he, "I verily believe thou dreamest." "Nay, my lord," replied Pyrrhus, "not a whit do I dream, neither do you. Rather you wag it with such vigour that, if this pear-tree did the like, there would be never a pear left on it." Then the lady, "What can this mean?" quoth she. "Can it be that it really seems to him to be as he says? Upon my hope of salvation, were I but in my former health, I would get me up there to judge for myself what these wonders are which he professes to see." Whereupon, as Pyrrhus and the pear-tree continued talking in the same strange strain, "Come down," quoth Nicostratus. And when he was down, "Now what," said Nicostratus, "is it thou sayest thou seest up there?" "I suppose," replied Pyrrhus, "that you take me to be deluded or dreaming, but as I must needs tell you the truth, I saw you lying upon your wife, and then when I came down, I saw you get up and sit you down here where you now are." "Therein," said Nicostratus, "thou wast certainly deluded, for since thou clomest the pear-tree, we have not budged a jot, save as thou seest." Then said Pyrrhus, "Why make more words about the matter? Saw you I certainly did, and seeing you, I saw you lying upon your own." Nicostratus's wonder now waxed momently, insomuch that he said, "I am minded to see if this pear-tree be enchanted, so that whoso is in it sees marvels." And so he got him up into it. Whereupon the lady and Pyrrhus fell to disporting them, and Nicostratus, seeing what they were about, exclaimed, "Ah, lewd woman, what is this thou doest? And thou, Pyrrhus, in whom I so much trusted?" And so saying, he began to climb down. Meanwhile the lady and Pyrrhus made answer, "We are sitting here." And seeing him descending, they placed themselves as they had been when he had left them, whom Nicostratus, being come down, no sooner saw than he fell a rating them. Then quoth Pyrrhus, "Verily, Nicostratus, I now acknowledge that, as you said a while ago, what I saw when I was in the pear-tree was but a false show, albeit I had never understood that so it was, but that I now see and know that thou hast also seen a false show. And that I speak truth you may sufficiently assure yourself, if you but reflect whether 'tis likely that your wife, who for virtue and discretion has not her peer among women, would, if she were minded so to dishonour you, see fit to do so before your very eyes. Of myself I say naught, albeit I had liefer be hewn in pieces than that I should so much as think of such a thing, much less do it in your presence. Wherefore 'tis evident that 'tis some illusion of sight that is propagated from the pear-tree. for naught in the world would have made me believe that I saw not you lying there in carnal intercourse with your wife, had I not heard you say that you saw me doing that which most assuredly, so far from doing, I never so much as thought of." The lady then started up with a most resentful mien, and burst out, "Foul fall thee, if thou knowest so little of me as to suppose that, if I were minded to do thee such foul dishonour as thou sayest thou didst see me do, I would come hither to do it before thine eyes. Rest assured that for such a purpose, were it ever mine, I should deem one of our chambers more meet, and it should go hard, but I would so order the matter that thou shouldst never know aught of it." Nicostratus, having heard both, and deeming that what they both averred must be true, to wit, that they would never have ventured upon such an act in his presence, passed from chiding to talk of the singularity of the thing, and how marvellous it was that the vision should reshape itself for everyone that clomb the tree. The lady, however, made a show of being distressed that Nicostratus should so have thought of her, and "Verily," quoth she, "no woman, neither I nor another, shall again suffer loss of honour by this fair tree. Run, Pyrrhus, and bring hither an axe, and at one and the same time vindicate thy honour and mine by felling it, albeit 'twere better for Nicostratus' skull should feel the weight of the axe, seeing that in utter heedlessness he so readily suffered the eyes of his mind to be blinded, for albeit this vision was seen by the bodily eye, yet ought the understanding by no means to have entertained and affirmed it as real." So Pyrrhus presently hied him to fetch the axe, and returning therewith, felled the pair, whereupon the lady, turning towards Nicostratus, "Now that this foe of my honour is fallen," quoth she, "my wrath is gone from me." Nicostratus then craving her pardon, she graciously granted it him, bidding him never again to suffer himself to be betrayed into thinking such a thing of her, who loved him more dearly than herself. So the poor duped husband went back with her and her lover to the palace, where not seldom in time to come Pyrrhus and Lydia took their pastime together, more at ease. God grant us the like. End of Day 7, the 9th story.